Welcome back to the Hammond Wealth Advisory Channel. If you haven't met me yet, my name is Chris Hammond. Thanks for joining with me today. Today I'm going to talk about a very common question that a lot of people have as they get closer to retirement. And that question is, have I saved enough to retire? This is a very common question because nobody wants to be in a position where they quit their job, they retire, only to find out 2-3 years later, oops, I made a mistake, I'm actually not financially independent at this point, and then be in the position where they have to go back to the workforce, try to find a job. They know they probably won't be able to find one as good as the one that they left. And then also there's just the fact that would be kind of embarrassing. And we want to avoid all of that from happening to you, to anybody else. Now, one reason that this question is so common in addition to that is because there's no perfect answer to it, and it can be somewhat difficult to answer. And the reason is because we can't see the future. We don't know how long your retirement is going to be with perfect certainty. We can't call up Miss Cleo on her 900 number and ask her to read your fortune and tell us what's your portfolio returns going to be over the next 20, 30 plus years, the portfolio that needs to grow to sustain you in retirement. And so it can be very difficult to answer this question. But there are 3 steps that you can take, and you can do these today to help give you a better estimation of, have I saved enough for retirement? And it really comes down to understanding 3 things: your outflows, your inflows, and your shortfalls. So let's jump into this at step number 1, and let's talk about your outflows. Your outflows are your monthly expenses. This is what it costs for you to run your household, to live the lifestyle that you want to live. And it's good to get an estimate today while you're still working of what your outflows really are. Why? Because what your outflows and your expenses are today are probably going to be very similar to when you retire. So you need to know now what it is you're going to have to spend on a monthly basis to enjoy your retirement. Now, if you're like most people, your financial life, probably most of it flows all through your checking account. You probably have your mortgage come out through that on a direct draft, maybe your utilities. Even if you're putting things on a credit card, at the end of the month, you're paying off that credit card through your checking account. Now, that's what makes this very easy on step number 1, is that you can start with your checking account and start with the beginning balance of it. On day 1, just log into your bank account and see what is my checking account's balance on the first day of this month. And then add in all of the income that comes in, whether that be from your salary, maybe you're drawing Social Security, maybe you have a pension or some other income that comes in. Add that number to your beginning balance and then subtract your ending balance. And what you'll get is an estimation of what you spend each month. Here's a quick example. Let's say you start off with $2,000 in the bank. You have $10,000 of income that comes in, and at the end of the month, you have $1,000 left in your bank account. That means approximately you spent $11,000 that month. Now, I would recommend that you take a couple of different months out of the year and get an estimate. Some months will have higher spending. January will probably have higher spending as the credit card bills come due from all the purchases and the gifts that you made to your loved ones back in December for the Christmas holidays. So take an average of that, and you'll have a really good estimate of what your monthly expenses are going to be today and what they'll probably be in retirement. Now, after you've done step number 1, jump into step number 2 and find out what your inflows are going to be. This is the income that you're going to have in retirement. So we don't want to include your salary, things that are no longer going to be coming in as income once you retire. You'll want to include things like Social Security. Maybe you have a pension. Maybe you're receiving some annuity income. Maybe you have rental real estate, or maybe some other sources of income as well. You'll want to add all those up together and find out what level of income are you going to have or that you can expect to have in retirement. Now, maybe you're not drawing Social Security yet and you're wondering, well, how do I add up and figure out what my Social Security income is? Well, it's actually pretty easy. You can go to Social Security's website, log in, create an account there, and then they'll tell you what your income is estimated to be from Social Security if you started drawing at 62, all the way up to 70, and all years in between. And so you can have a good idea of that. For your pension, if you don't know if you have a pension, That's great. And if you don't know what it's going to be, call up your benefits department at your work and ask them, what would my pension be based on, or the estimate of it based on the different ages that you're thinking about retiring. Now, once you've taken this second step and the first step, you have a good idea of what your income is going to be in retirement, as well as what your expenses are going to be as well. Now, the third step is to understand what your shortfalls are. And it's a really easy calculation. You start with your inflows, the number we calculated from step 2, subtract out your expenses, and what you get is probably going to be a shortfall, which means that your expenses were probably going to be greater than the income you're getting from Social Security. That's very common, by the way. So now you have to ask yourself the question, well, how am I going to fill this gap, this shortfall? Am I going to work a little bit longer? Am I going to have a part-time work? Am I going to make withdrawals from my portfolio? Or is there some other method? Maybe I'll have a big inheritance that comes in. I wouldn't count on that, but you never know, right? So you got to think about, how am I going to fill this gap? Now, since we're specifically answering the question of, have I saved enough? Let's talk about filling that gap from your savings. And there's a really quick rule that you can use for an estimation of this. It's called the 4% rule, which was based on a study done back in the 90s. And what you do is you take whatever your shortfall is, so each month, annualize that number, which means just multiply it by 12. And that's annually what your shortfall is that you need to be able to fill every year in retirement. Take that number, divide it by 4%, and that gives you a ballpark of how much you need to have saved before you retire. So for instance, if you did that calculation and you found out that you have a $40,000 shortfall every year that you need to fill in retirement, divide that number by 4%, and it's saying on a ballpark average, you need to have about $1 million saved. It could be more, it could be less on what you actually need, but it's a good ballpark range nevertheless. So I hope that helps. Take those steps today. And help you to better answer the question of, have you saved enough to retirement? And if you want additional help for planning for your own retirement, then click the link in the description below. It'll take you to my site where you can download a free copy of my essential step-by-step retirement guide that should be able to provide you additional help as you're preparing for your retirement. Thanks for watching. I'll see you on the next video.